We're joined now by Raheem Kassam from the centre-right website The Commentator, and also Nick Cohen from the independent think tank Civitas. Good evening to you both. Thank you for coming in. So what do you make of this? Is it patronising?
I think it's not only patronising, it's fundamentally incorrect. We wouldn't stand for anything like this in schools, in hospitals. You know, our public servants, we owe a debt of gratitude to. One of the ways that that needs to be expressed is in respect. Now, if that is breached, I think the police have the right maturity and level of independence to go on and make the decision themselves whether people should be arrested or not for these things.
Do you think they should have those powers to arrest?
I think so, yes.
Nick?
Well, actually, I somewhat agree that the guidance is patronising, but perhaps it is necessary given the fact that arrests take up an awful lot of police time and they should be used relatively sparingly. And I think that, you know, really the police should be trying to enforce the law rather than trying to enforce civility. Civility is a great thing, but it is something which is best enforced through, I suppose, more consensual activities than just arresting people and putting them in cells.
Now, anyone who's travelled on the tube, been into a hospital, the signs there are pretty clear, aren't they? You know, any verbal abuse against tube workers or hospital staff or nurses, you know, won't be tolerated. It's taken seriously and they are prosecuted. But not so for police and teachers.
Well, for me, I think it really depends on context. The street is a place where an awful lot of things are going on. People are going about their business, and some people might be rude, some people might be offensive, and that is part of what living in a free society is about. By contrast, in hospitals, you've got trained professionals trying to get very important jobs done, and therefore they don't need to be interrupted or, you know, suffer any abuse.
I think what's very important here is we note why sort of this breakdown in the sort of social fabric happens, and that's because people often feel like they need to challenge authority figures for the sake of challenging it, and a lot of the times this is what's happening. The police officers are being abused for the sake of it by some kind of BlackBerry-wielding pseudo-anarchist who believes that they're there just to impose themselves on the people. This is not a freedom of speech issue. Freedom of speech and freedom is not anarchy. The police are there to do a job, and if they're abused while doing that job, verbally, physically, they should, people who are doing that should expect to be arrested.
Do you think it comes with the territory of being a policeman, that in a sense, you know, being robust to these sorts of things, and coppers themselves say that, you know, whilst they don't necessarily like it or accept it, they have to be pragmatic? Well,
I'm yet to meet a soft bobby. They're all thick-skinned by nature, and yes, they are willing to take this. But whether you're willing or not, should they? And the answer is fundamentally no. They shouldn't have to expect this kind of abuse on the streets of Britain.
I think living in a free society means you have the right to do some fairly stupid things, including antagonising police officers. When that oversteps the mark to the point of harassment or to the point where you're interfering with the police doing their job, then that is a time for some sort of intervention, not before.
So can I ask you, do you think it would affect law enforcement in London, not allowing police officers to arrest people that verbally abuse them?
I think it would absolutely affect it. If you look at the sort of riots that have been happening over the last few weeks and months, those people will now have no recourse in terms of what can happen to them if they start abusing police officers, and it's a slippery slope. Where do we go from there? Physical abuse?
You know, many of the protesters, or at least, you know, a small minority of the protesters, were engaging in a lot more than just rudeness. They were engaging in aggressive behaviour and were in some cases rightly arrested.
Nick, if I can interrupt, a lot of our viewers who are watching probably will be very, very surprised that policemen can't arrest anyone that's verbally abusing them. How do you sort of justify that to them when they're watching at home?
Well, I say, you know, in the end, police are merely representative citizens of a free society, and you know, we allow people to be offensive and to be offended in this society. You know, you can curse the Prime Minister if you want, you can curse God if you really want to, you can curse the Pope, you can be offensive about all manner of things, and it is part of what makes a free society. And I'm not advocating anarchy here. I'm just saying that you need to watch that line into harassment, into interfering with what other people are doing in the street has happened before you intervene.
I'm afraid we must leave it there. To you both, thank you, and I'm sure there will be many people that agree and disagree with what you've said. Raheem Kassam and Nick Cohen, thank you very much for joining us.